everyone. Welcome to this edition of On Deck with Mercury. I'm Vienna Town Manager Mercury Payton. The town's first major zoning code update in nearly 60 years is moving right along with an eye toward Vienna in the future. The challenge is creating a code that meets the modern day lifestyles while featuring Vienna's small-town feel and making it more user-friendly for the residents. So joining me this evening, I have to my left Dave Levy. He's our Director of Planning and Zoning. Hi, David. How are you?
Hi.
Good to see you. And to his left is Natalie Monkou, who is the Economic Development Director. Hi, Natalie.
Hello, Mercury.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to sit down with me and our residents to talk about Code Create and other things going on with economic development. Last time we got together, David, you told us about an ambitious timeline for public meetings to get council direction on various sections of the code with a goal of completing all the revisions by the end of 2023. And we're in April, so how's it going?
Well, I think it's going really well. I mean, the council is really engaged. The planning commission is engaged. Drafts have been developed that were based on input from the community early on, and the staff and the consultant that the council hired put together these drafts, and then we've been reviewing them with the council, with the planning commission, so that they feel comfortable that it's in a good condition to send it out to the public for public hearing. So the first start is the public input, now kind of the churning and getting it right, and then it will once again be put out to the public. So I think we're good. You know, these are complicated topics, and it's hard to get it right, and the commission and especially the council are giving it their best effort. So I think we're good.
Yeah, that's good to hear. These meetings typically go really long and they're frequent. It's probably one of the few items that we cover in almost every meeting. We'll have a council meeting and then after there's a Code Create conference session and we go on for another hour and a half or 2 hours. So I know that is very intense workload on your team and your staff. So I appreciate all the time that you've given to that.
May I
effort.
add something?
Absolutely.
So before David arrived as well,
Yeah.
the team was already in full play of moving this great project forward.
Right.
And as David mentioned, public input was a part of the process from the very beginning. And it's still continuing. In fact, like a few weeks ago, David, Kelly, who's the deputy director, and we participated in some business engagement meetings too. So as David was pointing out, everybody is involved in the process of creating and updating the zoning code. So it's really exciting for everyone on all stakeholders.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. And I'm glad you brought that up because we're talking about ending and wrapping this up in some form by the end of 2023. But it didn't just start last year. I mean, this is something that has been ongoing for multiple years. And it's something that's so important to the council and to the community because once we get to the end of the process, we're going to have something that's more user-friendly and something that will impact residents for decades to come. And then even after it's approved at some point in this calendar year, there probably will be some small modifications along the way. Maybe talk a little bit about that aspect of.
Yeah. So a zoning, just some zoning basics. Zoning ordinances, the zoning regulations implement the town's vision. So the last time the town updated its comprehensive plan was 2016. In that 2016 comprehensive plan, it said one of the things that's important to do is update the zoning regulations. So what we're doing now is we're implementing a provision of the comprehensive plan. And it's for multiple reasons. One is that people have found that it's hard to use. You mentioned user-friendliness. But the other is that over the decades, things maybe are just kind of a little bit amiss or, they need to be adjusted. So there are so many components of a zoning ordinance. They include standards for building in residential areas, in commercial areas, and industrial areas, parkland that's active, parkland that's more passive in nature oriented. So it covers many, many details. Where the council staff, the community is going to cover as many as they can, but inevitably you encounter some things that need more study, that need more work. So what we anticipate, the council anticipates, is the product will be a zoning ordinance that's updated and a to-do list.
Right.
You know, and they call stick a pin in it. We're going to come back to it for some complicated topics.
Right.
And I'll give one example. For those who know Vienna very well, the Maple Avenue corridor has been a conversation for a very long time. There was a zoning overlay district called the Maple Avenue Commercial District that was implemented for 7 years. Then the council rescinded it. So now the council is working through, well, okay, what should the development regulations be along Maple Avenue? And they're going to make some decisions over the next few months, but then are likely to come back in the next year or so and say, okay, now let's talk about what we really want our long-term vision to be. Of course, that'll be the decision of the council if they want to do that.
Right.
But that seems to be the pathway, you know, to continue the community conversation.
That's an excellent approach and a way of thinking of it. I think that it helps clear up for residents what this task is up front, and then beyond 2023, what it may look like. And the council has already amended part of the code having to do with porch projections and lot coverage, giving Vienna residents greater flexibility and creating more livable space outdoors. Maybe talk about some other changes that are being considered that will benefit residents and their changing lifestyles as well as businesses.
Sure, a couple of them. So one of the things that in the early community outreach is that residents generally are happy with their neighborhoods. So there wasn't a big demand, oh, we need to upend the system.
Right.
So that, you know, so there's more stability than not in the single family areas of the town. No change in the building envelope. The two that you mentioned were addressed last year, decks and one thing that we did hear, though, is people were concerned about lighting and the impacts of lighting. So for the first time in the residential areas, there is in the draft code right now some protections against, you know, the lights that shine from a neighbor right into your yard and into the windows. So there's nothing that prevents that for now. So that's in the draft code now. But there has been more discussion about potential changes in the more commercial areas, including the interaction between commercial and industrial areas and the residential areas. So it's a very active discussion right now. How much development should be up against residential areas, what step back should be so you don't have it looming, so those are things that the council is discussing as protecting residential areas. The flip side of that is, how can we have a vibrant business sector?
Yes, please help me. I need the help.
Yeah, and Natalie has been, you know, right in the middle of discussing how we can, you know, encourage when things are getting a little bit run down, that development can fix things up. And I don't know if you want to pick up on some of that.
I think, though, it's really important to pull back to your first question, which was the enormity of this project and how it impacts not just residents, but businesses as well, which it's an ecosystem, right? We benefit from having everyone in our community. And one of the great things about the code and the update to the code is just the beginning that David said, it's to clarify, it's to simplify the code so that it is easier, not just for residents, but for a business owner to come into our town and to start their business, for a developer, for anyone that wants to build or create. And that's a huge thing in terms of our customer service and our ability to be business friendly. So really happy about that.
Right.
And then I think that there have been some changes that David mentioned that already have taken place as part of this process. Like outdoor dining was a huge topic, right, last year. This time last year, it was burning up in here on outdoor dining. And the truth was that we already had outdoor dining as part of the permitting process, but it became more clear about the options that restaurants had to provide this great resource for residents that seem to really enjoy it. And not just for residents, but for visitors, right? Because our town is supported not just from our residents, but from our business community. And they do well when they're supported also by the millions of people that live in this region.
Right.
So
Right.
I think being able to offer those types of services to the businesses through the code, like outdoor dining, was really supportive. And then there's other updates that are going to be happening and that we've been discussing in, this is a nugget, 5B, am I saying this right, David?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Article 5B kind of talks a little bit about signage, and that's a big deal for a business, is how do you become more visible to people on the road? And how do you become more visible to people who want to walk or bike to your location? So very key. And the fact is that the types of businesses that we had put into the code in terms of a use, they've changed, right? There's different businesses now that were not even heard of before 50 years, and now we're including them in our code. Huge difference, right? So I'm just trying to say overall that the lifestyle of residents are changing, but so is the breakthrough in terms of the growth and the opportunities for businesses in the town of Vienna. So really excited about it.
Can I give another example? Yeah,
absolutely.
another example of just adjusting with the times. I think an evolution that's happening on the residential side is a more direct understanding of that the townhouse communities are really full parts of the community. In the existing code, townhouses are seen as kind of as commercial, and they're in the commercial sections, and it's almost from the perspective of the developer as compared to the perspective of actually the people who live in them. So there are going to be more provisions that, the things that apply to protect single-family detached areas are going to be available also for the townhouse communities. And it's part of kind of recognizing the evolution of the town and the types of units that are in here.
Yeah.
And before we transition completely to economic development, let's talk real quickly about public input and the role that residents have in this process. I know that over the years, residents have come in and interacted with the code and had questions, and those questions have been noted over the years, and they've played a role actually in where we are at this point. So we have public input this year through 2023. We have public hearings and other. Maybe talk a little bit about that, and then talk about what the public input will be afterwards once it's approved. But then we again will have some maybe maintenance to the document itself. So
Sure.
Maybe
Happy to. So number one, codecreatevienna.com. That's the website that, again, codecreatevienna.com. That's how you can keep track of what's going on. We do updates on a regular basis. We get links to what the agendas are for the council and the planning commission. Anybody can keep track of what's going on. You can sign up for the listserv. And if you have ideas and thoughts and concerns, anytime you can send them in. The staff that are working with the council and the planning commission, which include myself, will read what comes in and will take them into account, and they'll be brought forward. So even right now, as the drafts are coming, are getting towards final, once the drafts are final, once the council says, yes, this is the one we want to release for the public, they will refer that formal draft to the planning commission for its formal input, and the council will announce the dates for public hearing. Right now, the council and the planning commission plan on doing it as a joint public hearing, so they'll both hear the comments together, and there will be 2 dates. So if you can't make it on the one day, you can come on the other day to try to make it as accessible as possible. And if you can't make it either one, or you'd rather write it down, you could submit it in writing. Those dates aren't set yet because the draft isn't completed yet. When the document is released, you will see staff everywhere helping people to understand what's in the document, so you're better armed to make comments. We want an engaged community to give input. Those comments are not to us as staff, they're to the council, who are the decision makers. So they will see all of your comments in the form that you give it. They'll hear you say it, they'll read what you write, and they will take that into account as they make their final decisions. So it'll begin with the community, and it'll end with final community comments that the council can take into account.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And this will be a good time to transition to economic development. And I know that we have a planning process integrated with economic development. Natalie, working with the Town Business Liaison Committee, working with them to drive that work and make it happen. Maybe talk a little bit about that aspect of what you do, parking survey, other aspects that are integrated within maybe code create zoning, and then economic development as a whole.
Oh, sure. That's a loaded question.
It is.
Mercury,
I know.
so just wait for the answer. So I think what this process has taught me is that this is a direct partnership in which decisions made through permitting, the planning and zoning department, absolutely have an impact on economic development in the town, and vice versa, right? So where and why businesses decide to locate into our community, a lot of this is also dependent on the success of implementation, right? Our business friendliness also goes down to our code. How clear is it to understand, but then how clear is it to implement? And in fact, and David talked a little bit about this in the beginning, some of the discussions that council has even had around building heights, setbacks, those all have a role to play as well into how we're creating our community and how we create business locations that are destinations that serve residents, but also visitors. So it's a complete conversation to include businesses in this topic. And one of those points that are interesting to understand as part of the code, and David knows this way more than me. I am not an engineer, by the way, but parking does serve everyone, right? It serves people who are going to their doctor's appointments. It serves you if you're going to get groceries. So parking is going to have to be a big part of the conversation, and it's not going to just stop at the zoning code. So while, yes, it is a part of the code process, it is also a conversation that the town is undertaking overall. What is parking doing to help move us forward in our commercial downtown? Is it a pleasant experience for you as a resident to come and park and get what you need and have the experience that you want to have? And so the town is taking it seriously. So we're doing a parking study. In addition to that study happening, there is a conversation about what information from the parking study can serve the code and provide recommendations. So those are two separate tracks. I just want to make sure that people understand that. And so that's the part that I'm playing in. I'm not really playing in the pond where David is in terms of parking recommendations. It's a part of it, but it's not the main focus of what I'm doing. So I will say, though, that we did recently, as part of the parking study, do a parking survey where we surveyed the users. So that includes residents and visitors, employees of businesses, and business owners and private development. So we asked them to tell us about their experience with parking. Is it enough? Is it complicated? Can people understand where to park, how to park? And I think that is a part of this conversation that we're continuing to have, especially on Maple Avenue, Church Street, Mill and Dominion, which is a huge part of our commercial corridor. It is the main, if you would call it, the main street, right, of our town. So we really do need to make sure that off-street and on-street parking spaces And the ones that we inventoried for this parking study is over 5,000 parking spaces were
5,000.
inventoried just to make sure, like, who's utilizing it? What time are you utilizing it? So we're just trying to understand a little bit more about how parking influences decision making and how does it impact business and residents. And as part of that, like I said, the recommendations from the study overall will absolutely impact Code Create as well. So we're going to have business engagement as part of this process. We are going to share from a overall macro level about parking in the town. What recommendations would we make to make it a better experience, and what can the town government do to step in? In many cases, we don't own the properties that people park in. So how do we encourage? Maybe there's shared parking. Maybe there's a way to resolve some of the issues in certain areas where parking may be a little bit more tough.
Right.
So that's a conversation that's a little bit separate, but it lends itself to the Code Create conversation.
And you want to say something?
Well, just that we're working together on all of these things. So she'll take the lead on this and we'll support it. We'll take the lead over here and she'll support that. So as an example, Thursday night for the TBL Town Business Liaison Committee. Yep. Natalie asked me if I would come and work with the businesses that she works with all the time to help them understand the Code Create process. And then when they talk about their parking concerns, we take them into account.
Right.
But the survey is going to have a big, so if the council feels that from the parking study, yes, this is what we want to inform Code Create, we're ready to do it. If it's in time by the end of the year, then they can do it. If it takes a little longer, then that's one of those ones we'll put a pin in and then we can come back.
Yeah.
So,
and just to end this point on parking, we did have a parking survey, as we talked about, as part of this entire study. It was a month long that we opened it up to the public, and we received about 700 responses. Wow. And in those responses, we definitely got a clear picture of how people feel about parking in the town. Most of it is good, so that's the good news. And so everyone will have a chance to hear about what the report and the survey responses were. By the end of the month, we'll have it posted online.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So you two are steering a really, really big ship, and it sounds as though it's very well on a good course to meet the needs of Vienna's present day factors that are going on right now this spring and summer and beyond. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we close our time here together?
I'm just really happy to be a part of the conversation, and I'm happy that I'm able to work with great colleagues that are thinking about all aspects of who this code impacts and making sure that the engagement at every step involves who it needs to involve. Of course, council is going to be the decision maker at the end of this process, but they are open and willing to receive input from the public, and the public involves businesses too. They are a part of our community, and so I'm very happy that we have this opportunity to talk about it, to dialogue, to represent. They can come as well to public hearings. They can attend different meetings and provide their perspective. It's important to get all of those different voices at the table because we're trying to serve so many different interests. And at the end of the day, we want the town of Vienna to be the best it possibly can be. And it can't do that with just one or two voices. Everybody needs to come to the table to talk through it. So I think this has been a really great, challenging project, but it's transformational, and I really hope that people understand how important it is to have a solid code and how it impacts everyone.
Well, that's an excellent point, and it reminds me of the fact that while the ordinary things that happen, items that go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, that go to the Planning Commission, people walk in and they want to get a permit for this or that, economic development, they come in and you're working with a small business, a new business owner, Public Works, they're working on a myriad of issues to street pavement improvement and other items, and the finance director is working on the budget. Yet all of you all are working in tandem together on this Code Create. Christine Horner, acting director of Public Works, and her team, Marion Surface, director of finance, and her team, and all the other staff members in the different departments are all in some way interacting and making this team effort a success that it is along the journey. So I'm glad that you brought up the whole aspect of the team approach. And then the town council has been tireless in its approach of having meetings every week, almost 2 and 3 hours at a time, sometimes after council meetings. So it's one big effort from the council, each council, all 7 council members, to various departments. And I know that you all are often sitting there for a few hours, and then an economic development question comes up, and then you come up to the podium, and then a public works types question comes up, and then here comes Christine, and then a finance question, and then here comes Marion. So it's a big team effort. And so, and I think it's been going relatively well. So I really appreciate that. Yep. Anything that you'd like to add?
Well,
David?
I want to say, you say we're steering a big ship, but since you mentioned all those people who report to you, you're steering an even bigger ship.
So
that's things like zoning code provisions can really be hard to understand and really be obscure to people if you don't go into it. Among the most important things that we can accomplish with this is that when a person wants to build a deck, they can figure out what to do. When a person wants to make a modification to their house, they know what to do. I mean, we as staff are always committed to the highest level of customer service. So even if you can't understand the code language, you can always call our office in planning and zoning. We will always help you out. But if we do nothing else, we will do more. But if we do nothing else, we will make this code more accessible to the people who need to interact with it, so that not only the staff and the customers, but the various boards and commissions who are residents just like everybody else, and they need to make their decisions based on reading the language that's in there.
Right.
And the town council, when they need to make decisions. So if we can arrive at, hey, I want to put a new porch on my house. Hey, I want to do this. Hey, I want to start a new business. Oh, I found that. Oh, I understand. I see how this works. Then that'll be a big part of a success, how we'll judge the success.
Sure.
So,
Absolutely. And the way that you all look at every aspect, and you talked about a number of aspects. Residents will be generally interested in the one part that if they want to build that deck, they want to know how do I do that,
right,
and do that properly.
Right.
And there's other aspects as well. But you all are taking that 100% undivided attention on that and all the other aspects,
right,
and making sure it all ties together.
And how do we think about how we can serve them as best as we can?
Right.
And the only way to do it is with the team that Natalie mentioned. So who are the users? When it's finance and they're doing a new business license, but those people need an occupancy certificate through us. How do we make sure our systems are good, that our code is clear, that we're serving the businesses that Natalie's serving? It's the day-to-day stuff. We think sometimes of the big things, but a lot of it is the day-to-day stuff that makes a better business environment, that makes a better and easier place to live and more attractive. So I think that's the council's goal.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Well, fabulous. Yeah.
It's about investing in your place. That's what we're doing. We're investing in our place by making a change that has long been overdue for everyone. And so I'm excited about it.
Well, that is fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us and spending time with us here.
Happy to do it.
And we will look forward to meeting everyone or next On Deck with Mercury. So I hope everyone enjoys the spring, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much.